Born on March 5, 1958, in Detroit, Michigan, Marvin Weens is one of the most important people in gospel music and Christian ministry. He was a famous singer, pastor, and member of the Winans family. Throughout his career, he lived his faith and loved music deeply, leaving an indelible mark on both. Marvin comes from a family with strong gospel practices, and his journey shows how dedicated and persistent he is. Gospel singing was more than just an art form in Marvin Lawrence Winan's home when he was born. It was a way of life. His parents, King David Pop Winans and Dores Mom Winans, were both gospel singers and taught their children to love singing and have faith. The Winan family was known for their strong Christian beliefs and musical talent. Marvin and his brothers grew up in a home where gospel music was always playing. This helped them develop their talents. The Winan children, including Marvin, his brothers Carvin, Michael, and Ronald, were inspired by their parents' strong faith and musical skills. As they got older, they started acting together and were able to make their own movies. The Winans, a group that became famous across the country, formed based on this idea. Marvin Wayans' rise to fame as a gospel singer has a lot to do with his family's musical history. The Winans changed the course of gospel music with their unique blend of gospel modern Christian music, and R.B. Marvin was a key member of the group, and his smooth singing and music skills were very important to their success over the years. The Winans were known for using catchy melodies and creative arrangements to deliver powerful messages of faith, hope, and salvation. He and his brothers formed the Winans in the late 1970s, and it was clear that they wanted to make gospel words sound good to modern people without changing the spiritual content of their music. At first, the group played local shows to improve their skills, and soon, gospel and modern Christian music artists discovered them because of the way they mixed traditional and modern styles. They stood out from other groups in the same genre by combining church harmonies with smooth R&B production and modern Christian music. The 1980s were a big year for the Winans because they started to become famous in the world of church music. Their unique sound, which mixed traditional gospel with smooth R&B production, made them popular with many people and helped them break into the general music scene while still staying true to their strong religious message. It was Marvin Winans' smooth tenor voice that helped blend church music with modern Christian music on the group's album Let My People, which won a. One of their most important moments was winning the Grammy for Best Soul Gospel Performance, and a lot of praise. Not only did Let My People Go have great production and musical arrangements, but it also had socially aware lyrics. The record talked about faith, freedom songs like Choose Ye, and The Question Is had strong spiritually uplifting messages. After the hit album Let My People Go, the Winans had a string of other hits that solidified their place as pioneers in the gospel genre. People from all walks of life liked their music, traditional church fans and modern music fans alike. You can tell how good the group's vocals were by how well they were able to mix gospel and modern sounds without losing their faith. Return, the Winans' next important record, came out in 1990. Like their other albums, it had a unique mix of gospel and modern sounds, but it also showed how much the musicians and songwriters had grown. The parts that Marvin Winans played on this record stood out. The Winans were known for their spiritual depth, but they also gave the record a polished modern sound. Return was one of the group's biggest hits and earned them another Grammy Award. Many people, even those who didn't normally listen to gospel music, loved Anita Baker's songs like Ain't No Need to Worry. The message of the song, which was to trust God through hard times, was delivered with a smooth, soulful melody that summed up the group's unique style of gospel music beautifully. The album also showed the group's growing skill at making music that spoke to people's lives and pointed them to spiritual answers. The words of Return made it clear that the song was about getting through hard times by relying on faith and asking for forgiveness. Marvin Wayans' voice was a big part of getting these ideas across. Marvin Weens managed and wrote many of the Winans songs and had a clear, smooth voice with a lot of emotional depth. As lead singer, he could use his voice to show deep feeling and spirituality in performances that spoke to people on a spiritual and creative level. Marvin's music skills were just as important to the group's success as his singing. He was good at writing songs that were interesting to listen to and had spiritual value. His ability to mix traditional gospel themes with more modern types of music helped the Winans reach more people. For younger fans of the R&B parts of their music, songs like Tomorrow became spiritual anthems for people who were looking for spiritual guidance through the hard parts of life. Marvin also did things outside of the studio as the group's fame grew. He talked about the power of gospel music, stressing how important faith is and how music can help people find it. They became famous in other areas of their lives, but they stayed focused on their goal to spread the gospel. People look up to Marvin Winans as a spiritual leader, as well as a famous church singer and songwriter. His work started in gospel music and went smoothly into ministry, where he continued to make a big impact. In 1989, Marvin started the Perfecting Church in Detroit, Michigan, which made him a preacher and a leader. He turned the church into a place of faith and outreach for the community, bringing in thousands of new people and changing the gospel world in new ways. As both a musician and a pastor, Marvin was able to help people and spread the gospel through the work he began while he was still singing with the Winans. Marvin was having a lot of success with his gospel music, but he felt a stronger call to serve his community. He answered this call by starting the Perfecting Church in his hometown of Detroit, Michigan, in 1989. According to Ephesians 4, the Perfecting Church started out small but quickly grew into a large congregation and a spiritual hub for the neighborhood. 12. The goal of improving church was to get saints ready for mission work. Marvin Winans wanted the church to be a place where people could go. Marvin wanted to make church a place where people could feel spiritually refreshed and strong. People from all walks of life were drawn to him because he could easily explain his vision and had a strong faith. When he was in charge of Perfecting Church, it quickly gained thousands of followers. People knew the church for its lively worship services, moving talks, and effective programs to reach out to the community. The gospel music background of a lot of sincere praise, live music, and choir shows were a part of Marvin's church's worship. He had a deep understanding of how music could be used as a form of prayer, which helped build a worship culture that kept people interested. The church's quick rise also showed that it was becoming more important in the Detroit area. Perfecting Church became a place where people could gather spiritually and socially, offering many services to the neighborhood. The church had an effect on people outside of its own members. Marvin Winans and his church focused on meeting the needs of the local community. They did this by holding food drives, helping people find jobs, and mentoring programs for young people. As a result, Perfecting Church became a place where people could get both spiritual advice and help with everyday things. Marvin Winans continued to have a big impact on the church world through his work at Perfecting Church. He had a unique view on how music could be used for service because he had been a musician himself. As a gospel musician, Marvin taught many young artists and singers how to get better at what they do and how to use their music to share the gospel and change people's lives. One of the most important things Marvin did with his power was to use his love of music in his mission. The choir and live musicians often performed at the church's worship services, which made the audience feel like they were in a place of praise. As a minister, Marvin would sometimes join the choir and live musicians on stage. His ability to combine his musical skills with his duty to lead his community in worship was one of the things that made him a great leader at Perfecting Church. Marvin was able to teach other artists in places other than his church. People looked up to him in both gospel music and ministry, so musicians who wanted to balance their faith with their jobs went to him for advice. As they tried to make it in the music business, Marvin often told them how important it was to stay true to their spiritual beliefs. A lot of artists' lives were changed by the things he taught them, like how to make sure that their songs would continue to honor God while also reaching more people. As a key building in Detroit, Perfecting Church did more than just preach religion in the neighborhood. It was a safe place to go, a place of service, and a place of strength. One way Marvin Weens made sure. The Perfecting Church was more than just a place to pray, it was also a place where people could get real help in their neighborhood. Marvin thought that the church should help meet the social, economic, and emotional needs of the people in the city. Members were encouraged to get involved, even if it meant helping with food drives or projects that helped the most vulnerable people in the city. Many people in the Detroit area relied on the church's charity work to stay alive. Because they held charity events and offered counseling, the church became a place where people could go to find hope and help when they needed it. Marvin was a leader in the community, and not just because he was a member of the church. Because of his fame, he was able to speak out for social change and important problems in Detroit. He spoke out a lot about issues of social justice and encouraged his church and the community as a whole to live out there. Because he cares about social justice and getting involved in the community, Marvin Winans has been a part of and a driver of good change in Detroit his whole career. He has always stressed how important faith and service are. He went from being even though music has always been a big part of his ministry, his calling to teach and serve has given him new ways to reach people. His main goal is to make the church a better place where people can show their faith by helping others and where spiritual growth is supported in all areas of life. Marvin's work has affected many people, both inside and outside of church. His sermons, music, and outreach projects have changed people's lives all over the world, not just in Detroit. The church is doing well under his direction, being a source of faith, hope, and service in a place that has had a lot of problems. Marvin Winans is known for his work in gospel music and ministry, but he has been through terrible tragedies that have changed his life. In 2005, he lost his brother Ronald Wean, which was one of the saddest and most important events in his life. Ronald died at the age of 48 from heart disease. Marvin found this loss very hard because Ronald was not only a fellow musician at church but also a close friend he had known for a long time. Ronald, the oldest brother in the group, was very important to Marvin because he was seen as a leader in the family and in the songs they made together. Ronald's full, warm voice was a big part of the group's sound, and his advice helped the Winans become famous. Ronald was more to Marvin than just a bass player. He was a brother who shared many things with him. He had health problems, mostly heart disease, his whole adult life. Even though he was sick, Ronald kept performing and inspiring people with his music and story. In 2005, his health got worse, and he died of heart problems at age 48. It was a terrible blow to the Winan family, especially to Marvin, who had been Ronald's brother's friend and business partner for decades. Ronald's death was more than just the loss of a teammate, it was the loss of a brother and a secret friend as they went through the ups and downs of. They shared many happy, sad, and triumphant times in their personal lives and in the music business. When Ronald died, Marvin had a hole in his life that was hard to fill. Even though his faith and calling as a preacher gave him strength, the loss of someone close to him was unbearably painful. Marvin talked a lot about the power of faith in the face of loss and suffering when he was the pastor of Perfecting Church in Detroit. During this time, he preached a lot about grief healing and the promise of eternal life, which was comforting for both the people who heard him and himself. He could help others in a more genuine and understanding way because he had been there himself. Marvin also used music to show. He kept touring and recording, but the tone of his music got darker and more introspective after Ronald's death. Ronald's death taught Marvin how short life is, and he wanted to use this to make his point or inspire people. After Ronald's death, Marvin's songs got darker and more introspective. They still sang about faith's happiness, but they also talked about how to be strong to get through the hardest times in life. Being able to deal with his pain through music helped. Many of his fans could relate to his pain and loss, and his songs became examples of how faith can help you get through hard times, giving people who are going through their own problems hope. Even though it hurts to lose his brother, Marvin Weens has decided to honor Ronald's memory by continuing to share their music and the message of hope that they both loved. Their strong faith helped the Ween family get through this hard time, and Ronald's memory lives on through their music, thanks to Marvin's leadership in his family and in the gospel community. It was a scary and traumatic event for Marvin Winans in 2012 when his faith and service were put to the test. He was attacked by a group of men and had his car stolen in Detroit, the city where he had lived most of his life as a gospel musician and preacher. The attack left him physically and mentally shaken, but Marvin chose to forgive instead of getting angry, living out the Christian values he taught others. When Marvin pulled over at a gas station on the west side of Detroit on May 16, 2012, his car was stolen. When Marvin was getting gas, he was attacked by a group of guys who hit him hard, took his Rolex watch, and demanded his wallet, all in a matter of seconds. They also took his fancy SUV in the middle of all the chaos and ran away, leaving him hurt. Marvin got cuts and bruises in the attack, and the stressful event affected him emotionally for a long time. The event made people more aware of the violence that had been going on in Detroit, a city with a long history of social unrest and economic decline. Marvin had been a leader in the city and an advocate for his community for a long time through his work at Perfecting Church, but now he was having the same problems that so many other people in Detroit were. The theft of the car wasn't just a physical attack. Marvin had spent his whole life helping other people, so this event really hurt him. It was shocking and painful for Marvin to be robbed and attacked in a city he loved. He was known for caring about and loving the people of Detroit, but now he had to figure out how to balance his faith and views with the violence he had been through. Marvin kept his cool and didn't let what happened stop him from reaching his goal. His injuries were treated at a nearby hospital, but it took longer for his mental scars to heal. Marvin found comfort in his faith and strength in his belief that this could have made him lose faith in his community, but it made him more determined to forget and heal. When his car was stolen, Marvin Winans showed how much his faith means to him by not getting angry or bitter. Instead, he asked the people who hurt him to forgive him. He knew that they could. Rather than getting back at the men who attacked him, Marvin prayed for them. The strong way he answered showed how much he cared about Christian morals. As a preacher, he often talked about how important it is to forgive, even when someone has hurt you deeply. Now it was time for him to show that message in a very real and honest way. Forgiving the men who had hurt him was not only a way for him to heal, but it was also a public sign of the Lord's love and care. He never lost faith in the power of kindness and redemption, and he talked about how important it was to move on from the bad experience and keep working to help others. He said over and over that his faith gave him the power to. He made it clear that instead of anger and hate, People should forgive and be kind. After the carjacking, people paid more attention to the bigger problems Detroit is having, like poverty and crime. As a well-known person in the city, Marvin Winans' abuse brought to light the problems that many Detroiters face every day. It made him realize how important it is to heal the community, get the economy going again, and cut down on crime in the city. Marvin kept fighting for Detroit and its people even after the terrible events. His church protecting church continued to be a source of. As Marvin has gone through hard times, he has kept working to fix the problems that were making the city violent and desperate. He made it clear that he wanted to be a spiritual and social part of the solution. Many people have been moved by Marvin Winans' unwavering faith. He is a source of hope in the gospel community because he can deal with his pain through music and service. Marvin keeps using his fame to show people that faith can get them through even the worst times, whether he's singing about God's promises or saving people. Marvin made an impact because he was real. He doesn't just talk about hope and strength in a vague or theoretical way, he lives them out. He knows what it's like to lose a loved one and be traumatized by violence. But he chooses to think about the good things in life and always tries to make other people happy instead of dwelling on his own pain. This is why Marvin's personal and professional life show how faith can change things.